Soft rain, a car door closes. Footsteps on wet pavement. She was wiping down tables when the lawyers walked in. Black suits, leather briefcases, eyes that didn't smile. They ordered nothing, just asked if she was Maya Chen. When she nodded, they slid an envelope across the sticky counter and said 7 words that changed everything. Your grandfather left you his entire fortune. The problem? She didn't know she had a grandfather. And the family who did know? They'd spent 30 years making sure she never found out. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Maya Chen, and this is the story of how a family secret, a hidden inheritance, and one shocking DNA test revealed that the people I thought abandoned me were actually the ones protecting me all along. 3 days before those lawyers found me, I was living in a studio apartment in Seattle with water stains on the ceiling and a landlord who pretended not to hear when the heat stopped working. I worked double shifts at Bernie's Diner, the kind of place where truckers knew your name and left quarters as tips. I was 20 to 8 years old, and I'd been on my own since I was 17. My mother died when I was 16, cancer, and I never knew my father. That's what I was told anyway. What I did know was this. I grew up believing I had no one. No grandparents, no cousins, no family photographs in frames. Just me, my mother, and a lifetime of questions she refused to answer. When she got sick, I asked her again, Mom, please, is there anyone I should call? Anyone who should know? She looked at me with tired eyes and whispered, You're safer this way, Maya. Trust me. I didn't understand what she meant. And 3 weeks later, she was gone. So I did what I had to do. I worked. I survived. I stopped asking questions because there was no one left to answer them. Until that Tuesday afternoon, when everything I thought I knew turned out to be a lie. The lawyers introduced themselves as representatives of the Chen family estate. They told me my grandfather, William Chen, had passed away 2 months earlier at the age of 89. They told me he'd built a commercial real estate empire worth over $40 million. And they told me something I still couldn't process. I was his only living heir. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You've got the wrong person, I said. I don't have a grandfather. I don't have anyone. But they pulled out documents. A birth certificate I'd never seen. My mother's full legal name, which I'd only known as Mom. And a photograph of a man standing in front of a building with my mother beside him. She looked young, maybe 20. And she was smiling in a way I'd never seen her smile. They explained that my grandfather had been searching for me for years, that he hired investigators, that he set up the inheritance in a way that would find me even if he didn't live long enough to do it himself. And then they said the part that made my hands go cold. Your mother left the family in 2006, she took you and disappeared. Your grandfather tried everything to locate you both, but she made sure you couldn't be found. Until now. I sat there, staring at the envelope, my mind racing. Why would my mother run? Why would she hide me from someone who clearly wanted to find us? And if he had all that money, why did we live the way we did? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the photograph, my mother's face, the way she stood next to him. There was no anger in her eyes, no fear, just sadness, deep, unshakable sadness. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. She didn't run because she hated him. She ran because she was protecting me from something or someone. 2 days later, I met with the estate lawyers at their downtown office. The building was all glass and marble, the kind of place where people wore shoes that cost more than my rent. They walked me through the will, properties in Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco, investment portfolios, business partnerships, and a handwritten letter addressed to me. My hands shook as I opened it. The handwriting was shaky but clear. Maya, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you finally know the truth. I'm sorry I couldn't meet you. I'm sorry your mother felt she had no choice, but you need to understand something. You were always loved, you were always wanted, and you were always in danger. Danger. That word echoed in my head for hours. What kind of danger? From who? The lawyers couldn't answer that, or they wouldn't, but they did tell me one thing that made my stomach drop. The will had been contested by my grandfather's younger brother, Richard Chen, and his 2 sons. They'd filed a lawsuit the moment the will was read, claiming I was not a legitimate heir, that my mother had manipulated my grandfather, that I was a fraud, and they wanted everything. I didn't even know these people existed, and they were already trying to erase me, just like someone had erased me 30 years ago. The lawyers assured me the will was airtight, but they also warned me, these people have resources, Maya, and they're not going to stop. I asked the question I'd been too afraid to ask before. Did my grandfather know where we were? before he died?" The lead attorney hesitated. Then he nodded. "He found you about 5 years ago. He wanted to reach out, but your mother sent him a letter. She begged him not to contact you. She said if he did, they would find you too." That word again. And suddenly, I understood. My mother didn't run from my grandfather. She ran from them. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what any reasonable person would do. I panicked. I Googled everything I could find about the Chen family. Turns out they were well known in Seattle's real estate world. My grandfather had started with nothing, built his empire through hard work and smart investments. But his brother Richard, different story. There were articles about lawsuits, shady business deals, accusations of fraud that never quite stuck. And his sons, Evan and Marcus, were just as bad. One had been sued for harassment by a former employee. The other had a DUI and a history of settling legal disputes with money. These were the people who wanted me gone. And the more I learned, the more I realized my mother had been right to run. But here's the thing. I wasn't my mother. I didn't have a child to protect. I didn't have anything to lose. And I was tired of being invisible. So I hired my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Angela Torres, who took one look at the case and said, "They're going to come after you hard." Are you ready for that? I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway. The first attack came fast. A week later, a local news blog published an article titled, "Mystery Heir or Opportunist? The Strange Case of Maya Chen." It painted me as a nobody who came out of nowhere to steal a fortune. It questioned my legitimacy. It even included a photo of me leaving the diner in my uniform, looking tired and poor. Like that somehow disqualified me. The comment section was brutal. People I'd never met calling me a gold digger, a liar, a scam artist. I wanted to disappear. But Angela told me to hold steady. "This is what they do," she said. "They try to humiliate you into walking away. Don't give them that power." So I didn't. Instead, I did something my mother never got to do. I fought back. We requested a DNA test. Not because I doubted who I was, but because I wanted proof they couldn't argue with. The results came back 2 weeks later. 99.97% match. William Chen was my grandfather. And suddenly, the people calling me a fraud went very, very quiet. But the lawsuit didn't stop. Richard and his sons doubled down. They claimed my mother had brainwashed my grandfather in his old age, that she'd manipulated him into writing me into the will, that I was part of some long con. It was absurd, but it was also strategic. They were trying to drag this out, to exhaust me, to make me give up. What they didn't know was that I'd spent my entire life being underestimated, and I was just getting started. Angela dug deeper into the family history, and what she found changed everything. Turns out, my mother hadn't just left the family. She'd reported them to the police, to the IRS, to anyone who would listen. She'd tried to expose Richard for fraud, for stealing from my grandfather's company, for using family money to cover up his son's mistakes, but no one believed her. She was just the daughter, the emotional one, the one who was causing problems. So she did the only thing she could. She took me and ran, and for 30 years, she kept me safe. Even when it meant living in cheap apartments, even when it meant working 2 jobs, even when it meant dying without ever telling me the truth, because she knew the moment I learned who I was, they'd come for me. And she was right. At the court hearing, I finally met them. Richard Chen walked in like he owned the room, silver hair perfectly combed, expensive suit, practiced smile. His sons flanked him like bodyguards. They didn't even look at me, not once. To them, I wasn't a person. I was an obstacle. But when the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up. My voice shook, but I spoke anyway. I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know my grandfather existed until 2 months ago, but he wanted me to have this. Not because I deserved it, because he loved my mother. And he loved me. And no amount of money you throw at lawyers will change that. Richard's face went red. His lawyer objected, but the judge silenced him. And for the first time, I saw something flicker in Richard's eyes. Fear, because he realized what my mother had known all along. The truth always comes out. It just takes time. The case was dismissed 3 weeks later. The will stood, the estate was mine, and Richard Chen, the man who'd spent decades stealing from his own brother, walked out of that courtroom with nothing but his reputation in ruins. But here's the part that surprised me. I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad, because none of this brought my mother back. None of this gave me the childhood I should have had. And none of this erased the 30 years I spent thinking I was alone. So I made a choice. I sold most of the properties. I kept one building in Seattle, a small apartment complex my grandfather had built himself. And I used the rest of the money to start something my mother would have been proud of. A foundation for young women aging out of foster care. For girls like I could have been, Girls who think they have no one, because I learned something powerful through all of this. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up. It's the ones who protect you, even when it costs them everything. And my mother? She was my family. She gave up everything so I could be free. And now, because of her, I get to help others do the same. So let me ask you this. If you discovered your entire life was built on a secret someone kept to protect you, would you be angry or grateful? If you had the chance to claim an inheritance that came with a battle, would you fight? Or walk away? And if you could use unexpected wealth to honor the person who sacrificed everything for you, what would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life inspired stories about courage, family, and the secrets we keep to protect the people we love. Because sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's knowing someone loved you enough to lose everything just so you could be safe.